The sip and see for my son was a beautiful affair, except for one detail. My husband's entire family was absent. I didn't get angry. Instead, the next day, I terminated a $350,000 project contract with my sister-in-law's husband. My name is Amy. I'm 32, a landscape architect. I own a small firm, but it provides a good living. I'm not bragging, I'm just setting the scene. I built my career on merit, on long nights hunched over blueprints, on standing under the scorching sun at construction sites, forcing a smile to maintain my reputation. My husband's name is Henry. He's a kind, quiet man who works a stable job with the state government. Henry loves our son and me, but his love often comes with a dangerous attachment: fear. Fear of his mother, his sister, his relatives, fear of gossip, of disrupting the peace. And in the end, the ones who always paid the price were his wife and child. My son, Leo, was 1 month old. His skin was rosy, his lips a perfect little bow, and he slept with the profound peace of someone who had never known the world's chaos. Holding him, I would just stare. That tiny head, that breath smelling of sweet milk, it made me want to both weep and harden my resolve. I understood that from the moment he was born, I no longer lived just for myself. I hosted Leo's Sip and See at a large hotel in the heart of the city. I booked 20 tables, not for show, but because our guests were a mix of business partners, colleagues, friends, and family from both sides. My mother had advised me to make sure everything was respectable, so people would look upon the baby with affection. My father was more direct. For him, it was about maintaining appearances. Like most older parents, they just wanted to see their children settled and happy. I wanted that too. I hoped this party would be a beautiful pretense to bring our two families closer. I had told myself to let it go all the years of criticism and scrutiny. I told myself to be patient. Now that they had a grandson, surely their hearts would soften. But life has a way of mocking you just when you crave peace the most. Right before the event began, the hall manager approached me and whispered that my in-laws' table, fully set, remained completely empty. I glanced at the head table. Henry and I were seated there. My parents sat opposite us, and next to them was a chillingly empty stretch of chairs. I had reserved the best seats for my father-in-law and mother-in-law, for my sister-in-law Vanessa, and her husband Tyler, and for their 2 children. I had even instructed the kitchen to prepare a special low-oil dish for my mother-in-law, who suffered from stomach problems. Now, those vacant chairs felt like a bucket of ice water had been dumped on our celebration. Henry stood beside me, beads of sweat forming on his forehead. He tried calling them once, twice, 5 times. I saw his screen. The calls went straight to voicemail. He swallowed hard and mumbled that maybe they were stuck in traffic or their phones had died. I said nothing. I just looked at this tall, strong man who stood before his wife and child like a schoolboy caught doing something wrong. Seeing him like that made my heart crack into 1,000 pieces. Guests began to arrive in droves. They offered congratulations, they smiled, and they glanced around. I knew that glance all too well. It wasn't malicious, but it was laced with a prying curiosity. It was like a needle poking at the very spot you were trying to hide. Beneath the table, my mother gently squeezed my wrist. Her hand was cold. My father sat bolt upright, his expression as hard as stone. I knew he was swallowing his anger for my sake. When the MC began his speech, I carried Leo onto the stage. The spotlight illuminated every face below. I smiled. It was the kind of practiced smile my profession demanded. No blame, no excuses, no tears. I said a few words of thanks, then turned towards that empty table and offered a faint smile. I explained that Leo's paternal grandparents and his aunt and uncle had a family matter to attend to and couldn't make it on time, but that we should all start the celebration. "Let's save family matters for later," I said. As the words left my lips, I heard a sound in my heart like fine china shattering the sound of a belief breaking irrevocably. I had once believed that patience would earn me affection. I had once believed that having a son would earn me respect. I had once believed family was a place where people wouldn't dream of humiliating you. It turned out they would. The party continued. I went from table to table, raising my glass, smiling, and offering thanks. Everyone complimented Leo on how handsome he was. But I could hear the whispers. The in-laws didn't come? There must be a problem. They must not like her. Henry followed me, a shadow at my heels. He smiled and nodded too, but his eyes constantly darted away. I didn't need an apology from him. I needed him to stand up and say one clear, definitive sentence to defend his wife and child in front of everyone. But he didn't. He was silent, and that silence hurt more than a slap. Towards the end of the evening, as guests were leaving, I finally had a chance to find out the truth. I called a distant relative on my husband's side, his mother's second cousin. The phone rang once, and she picked up immediately. So, it wasn't a dead battery or bad reception. They had just been ignoring my calls. I asked her directly, my voice steady. "Auntie, was our family attending someone else's party this afternoon?" There was a pause, then a sigh. "Amy, dear, don't be upset. Your mother-in-law's sister was also hosting a 1-month party for her grandchild. Your mother-in-law was afraid of offending them, so she took the whole family over there." I didn't hear the rest of what she said. The only words that registered were times she took the whole family over there *. Standing in the middle of the hotel lobby, holding my son, my ears buzzed. I looked at Henry. He looked back at me, his eyes red, yet he still hadn't dared to say a single word to his family. He just stammered that he would explain. I managed a weak smile, my throat tight. I told him, just loud enough for him to hear, that there was no need for an explanation. I understood everything now. That night, I put Leo down in his crib. He slept soundly, his tiny hand grasping my finger as if it were the only thing in the world he could trust. I went to my office and opened my laptop. In my inbox was a contract waiting to be executed, a $350,000 landscape project for a public works facility. The signatory for the partner company was none other than Tyler, my sister-in-law's husband. I had pushed this contract through, ignoring warnings from my legal team because I thought it was family helping family. The word partner on the screen tasted bitter. I didn't scream or slam my fist on the desk or call anyone to yell. I just sat up straight, took a deep breath, and opened a new document, a notice of termination of cooperation. The reasons I listed were all professional: missed deadlines, incomplete paperwork, improper requests for advance payments. I had evidence for every single claim. I finished typing, saved the document, and scheduled it to be sent at 9 a.m. the next morning. After clicking confirm, I sat in silence. The house was still, save for the hum of the air conditioner and the soft sound of my son's breathing. I glanced toward his room, where he slept peacefully in the darkness. I whispered, as if reminding myself, "Leo, honey, Mommy doesn't need anyone's affection. She just needs you to be respected." And I knew that starting tomorrow, my in-laws' peaceful world would be shattered. But it wasn't because I was being cruel. It was because they had chosen to disrespect my son and me first. I was simply returning the consequences of that disrespect. The next morning, I woke up very early, not from insomnia, but because a wire inside me had been pulled too taut. Lying in bed for another minute would have snapped me upright. I got dressed, washed my face, and made a glass of warm water. Leo was asleep in his crib, his lips pursed as if dreaming of milk. Looking at him, I told myself to be clear-headed, to be firm. There are some battles where if you soften even a little, people will push you back until you have no ground left to stand on. At 10 minutes to 9, my phone started vibrating. A few stray texts at first, then a deluge. I wasn't in a hurry. I picked Leo up, fed him, changed his diaper, and rocked him back to sleep. I did everything slowly, deliberately, as if there wasn't a storm brewing outside over a $350,000 contract. At exactly 9 a.m., the email was sent. I sat at my computer, watching the sent notification appear, and felt a strange sense of calm. Not the calm of a victor, but the tranquility of someone who has finally set down a heavy burden. At 9:15, Tyler called. I let it ring 3 times before answering. His voice on the other end was strained, trying to maintain a professional tone, but the frustration bled through every word. "Amy," he said, "can you please double-check for me? Did your company send a termination notice? Is this some kind of mistake? The project is underway. We've already assigned staff and ordered materials. I listened without interrupting. When he finished, I replied in the even tone of a business meeting. "It's not a mistake, Tyler. It was a company decision. Our legal department reviewed the project milestones and your paperwork, and since you couldn't meet the requirements, we're halting the project." Tyler paused for a second. Then his voice dropped into a familiar, wheedling tone. "Amy, business is business, I get it. About the party yesterday, we can talk about that later. We're family after all. For Henry's sake, for little Leo's sake, don't be so harsh." I let out a small, dry laugh. I had expected this. When they needed money, they called you family. When they needed to save face in front of relatives, they forgot you were family too. "You're right," I said. "Business is business, which is exactly why we need to proceed professionally. My company can't risk an entire project and team on the basis of the word family." Tyler started losing his patience. His voice rose, revealing his true colors. "You talk about risk, but do you know who I had to ask to get this contract? Henry's mother and sister ran around for weeks for this. You signed it, and now you're backing out. Have you thought about the consequences? You're going to ruin us, Amy." I paused. The word ruin rolled off his tongue so easily, as if I were the one causing it. I glanced toward my son's room. Leo was still asleep, his tiny fists curled like new leaves. I spoke slowly. "Tyler, I signed because I trusted them. I trusted my mother-in-law, I trusted Henry, and I trusted my sister-in-law. But do you know what your mother-in-law and your entire family did yesterday, on the day of my son's 1-month celebration?" Tyler was silent. I knew he knew. He just wanted to ignore it, to change the subject. I continued, my voice steady. "If people are willing to abandon their own grandson in front of the whole world, then I have no reason to break my back to save your company. We're done here." "Amy," Tyler growled, "you do this, and you're destroying your own family." I replied without hesitation. My family was already destroyed the moment I saw those empty chairs at the head table. I'm just the one who stopped pretending. I hung up. My hand wasn't shaking. I put the phone down and stood up to open the curtains, letting more light in. The morning sun fell on the floor, thin as paper, but it made me feel like I could breathe again. Less than 5 minutes later, my mother-in-law, Carol, called. I never called her by her first name to her face. I still used Mom as a basic courtesy. But in my heart, the word no longer held any warmth. The moment I answered, her voice grated like a knife. "Amy, what kind of game are you playing? Who do you think you are, canceling Tyler's contract? Are you trying to destroy this family's livelihood?" I heard every word. And I heard what she didn't say. She didn't ask how Leo was. She didn't mention the party. She didn't ask if I was upset. She only asked about the contract. "Is the contract the only reason you called, Mom?" I asked. She faltered for a moment, then quickly changed the subject. "I already told you about yesterday. There was an urgent family matter with my relatives. I had to be there. You're still young. You don't understand how to navigate these things." A laugh escaped me, not loud, but sharp. "Navigating family politics is one thing, Mom. But leaving your daughter-in-law to hold her baby in front of 20 tables of guests, to be stared at and questioned, while the entire family turns off their phones, what kind of navigation is that?" She exploded. "You insolent girl! Are you blaming me? I'm your mother-in-law. I don't owe you anything." I gripped the phone tightly. I wanted to scream, to drill every word into her ear, but I remembered Leo was sleeping. I reined it in and said slowly, "You don't owe me anything, but you owe your grandson a blessing. You owe your grandson your presence." She was silent for a beat, then deflected everything back onto me. "He's just a baby. What does he know? The important thing is that as a woman, you need to know how to be patient. A woman who is too stubborn will break up her family." That sentence sent a chill down my spine. I suddenly understood. In her eyes, I wasn't a person. I was a woman, a thing that had to be patient, while a man like Henry, whose silence bordered on cowardice, was forgiven because he was a man. "You want me to be patient? Fine. But to what extent?" I asked. "Until I'm disrespected? Until I have to beg people to show affection to my own child?" She yelled, "Enough! You canceled the contract so you can deal with explaining it to your company. If Tyler's business collapses, I won't let you get away with it, I replied, still calm. You can do whatever you want, Mom, and I will do what's right for my company and for my son. She threw one last sentence at me like a nail in a coffin. You think you're so smart, don't you? If you're so smart, then you can raise your son by yourself. Don't expect this family to acknowledge him anymore. I went numb. Not from fear, but from the raw, naked truth. They only acknowledged me when I was useful, when I made money, signed contracts, brought in projects. But me as a mother, a wife, a daughter-in-law, I wasn't worth a shred of affection. Fine, I said. I'll raise him myself. I hung up. This time, my hand trembled slightly. I sank into a chair, staring blankly at the wall. An image of the hotel ballroom flashed in my mind. The empty chairs, the curious stares, my forced smile. I used to think my patience was for the sake of keeping my family together. Now I realize that some families can't be held together, no matter how hard you try, because their foundations were never built on love. Just then, the phone rang again. This time, it was Henry. Seeing his name on the screen gave me a strange feeling, both familiar and distant. I answered. Amy, his voice was tired. Please, don't make things worse. I'm at Mom's house. She and Vanessa are crying. The whole family is in chaos. The phrase, the whole family, felt like another slap. The whole family was in chaos over a lost contract. But yesterday, when I was standing in that ballroom holding our son, how chaotic was my world? Did he even ask? Did you call your mother after we got home last night? I asked. He stammered, yes, but she was busy. And Vanessa said, I cut him off, my voice quiet but sharp. Henry, did you ask your mother why the entire family turned off their phones when I called? He was silent, a silence as heavy as a stone. Amy, Mom is Mom. Please try to understand. At that point, I wasn't angry anymore. I just felt a deep, permeating sadness that reached the roots of my teeth. Don't ask me to understand anymore, I said. I've been understanding for 5 years. The result is that my son is treated like an excuse for people to show off, and I'm treated like a contract signing machine. His voice started to get defensive. You're disrespecting my family by saying that, I replied. Your family disrespected your wife and child first. He sighed heavily, as if about to argue, then lowered his voice. Amy, I'm begging you, just give Tyler a chance. That contract is huge. If you break it, people will say, my family relies on you, and then you'll humiliate us. I felt a bitter pang. So his greatest fear wasn't his child being hurt, but what people would say. He feared gossip more than his wife's tears. I asked one final question, slowly. Henry, do you remember when I was on stage yesterday and I said we'd save family matters for later? When do you think later is? He didn't answer. I continued, my voice soft but cold. Later is now. I'm not screaming or breaking things, but I'm not being patient anymore either. If you want me to give Tyler a chance, then answer one question for me, honestly. Yesterday, did you feel I was humiliated? The line was silent for a very long time. Then, he said quietly, I did. And what did you do to protect me? I asked. He choked up. I could hear his ragged breath. You did nothing, I said. You stood there and let me take it. I didn't know what to do. He burst out. I looked at my son, my heart hardening, but not out of spite. I said slowly, if you don't know what to do, then at the very least, don't drag me back to be the one who carries the burden for everyone. I hung up. And in that moment, I understood something. Canceling the contract was just the tip of the iceberg. The real issue was this marriage. If I didn't save myself, no one would. That afternoon, my dad called. His voice was deep and warm. Amy, are you okay? Your mother has been pacing all morning. Hearing my father's voice, a lump formed in my throat. I forced a smile. I'm okay, Dad. He paused, then said, Daughter, a home is a place you return to for support. If you go home and get hurt, then stand up straight. Your mother and I aren't rich, but we can raise our grandchild, and we can take care of you. I bit my lip to keep from crying. Thank you, Dad, I said. After hanging up, I picked Leo up and pressed my cheek against his forehead. I whispered, Did you hear that? Grandpa loves you. A warmth spread through me like a glowing ember. I knew I wasn't alone. Later that afternoon, the doorbell rang. I checked the security camera. Carol was standing there, and next to her was Vanessa, Henry's sister. Vanessa wore heavy makeup and bright red lipstick, as if she were out for a day of fun, not coming to talk to her sister-in-law. Behind them, I could see the faint outline of Tyler. I didn't open the door. I took Leo into his room and laid him down, then came back and pressed the intercom button. "Mom, Vanessa, what can I do for you?" My mother-in-law's voice was sharp. "Open the door. Are you trying to hide? Do you think this is over just because you locked the door?" I replied calmly. "I'm not hiding. I just don't want you coming in and raising your voice in front of Leo." Vanessa cut in, her tone dripping with acid. "You act so innocent. You pull one stunt and my whole family is in chaos, and now you're preaching about morality?" I looked straight at the camera. "Vanessa, you call me your sister, so speak to me with respect. Say what you want, but don't forget what you did yesterday." They went quiet outside. I knew they hadn't expected me to confront them directly. My mother-in-law changed her tune, feigning softness. "Amy, about yesterday, it was a difficult situation for me. But let's let bygones be bygones. Open the door so we can talk properly. Think of what the neighbors will say." A bitter smile touched my lips. Again with the neighbors, again with appearances. "You want to talk? Then talk from out there." "I can hear you," I said. Outside, Tyler spoke up, trying to sound gentle. "Amy, please let me in for a few words. I'm being sincere." "No need to come in. Just say it," I replied. I heard Vanessa take a sharp breath, as if about to curse, but my mother-in-law cut her off. She spoke quickly, afraid I'd interrupt. "You canceled the contract. You made this family lose face. You've endangered Tyler. What do you want? Do you want me to apologize?" "Fine. I'm sorry. Are you happy now?" Her apology held no remorse. It was like tossing me a bone in exchange for $350,000. I stood silently, listening to my own heartbeat, then spoke very slowly. "Are you sorry about the contract, or are you sorry for skipping Leo's party?" The silence outside was absolute. I continued, my voice no longer shaking. "If you're sorry about the contract, then don't be. That's a business matter. But if you're sorry about Leo, then say one thing and mean it. Asterisk, I was wrong to abandon my grandson, asterisk. If you say that from the heart, I'll open the door." My mother-in-law's voice shot up, shrill and furious. You dare to set conditions for your mother-in-law?" I saw it clearly then. She couldn't say those words. She couldn't admit she had abandoned her grandson. She just wanted her advantage back, I replied, my voice clear. "Yes, I'm setting conditions, because I have nothing left to lose but my dignity as a mother." After that, Vanessa unleashed a torrent of insults. I didn't listen. I just turned off the intercom and walked away. I went into my son's room and sat beside his crib, listening to him breathe. My heart ached, but I also felt a sense of relief. I ached because I knew I had crossed a line I could never go back on. I was relieved because, finally, I hadn't bowed my head. But I also knew they wouldn't stop there. When people lose something they value, they will find a way to get it back. And I knew that tonight, or tomorrow, they would find my weakest point and strike. Henry. That night, I barely slept. It wasn't because I was scared, but because my mind was racing, playing out all the scenarios I knew my in-laws would concoct. I had lived with them for 5 years, long enough to know their patterns. When being soft didn't work, they would get tough. When being tough didn't work, they would cry. And when crying didn't move you, they would shift the blame to someone else and force that person to bear the responsibility. That person was always Henry. Around midnight, my phone vibrated. A short text from him. Asterisk, Amy, can I come home to talk? Asterisk, I stared at the message for a long time. The word home in his text made me want to laugh. Which home? My home? The one I bought with my own money before we were married, where I was raising our son alone? Or the home in his mind, where his mother and sister were sitting and calculating every dollar of that lost contract? I replied with just 2 words. Asterisk, come home. Asterisk, 2 words. Not an invitation, not a rejection, but I knew it was going to be a long night. Around 1 a.m., the door opened. Henry walked in. His shirt was wrinkled, his eyes were red, and his hair was a mess. He didn't look like a man coming home, but like a child who had just been scolded and had nowhere else to run. I stood in the doorway of Leo's room, holding our son. I didn't invite him to sit, nor did I ask if he had eaten. I just said, "Talk." Henry stood in the middle of the living room, clenching and unclenching his fists. It took him several tries to speak. Mom and Vanessa," they said a lot. "Tyler is getting pressure from the bank. If this contract doesn't save him, his company will really go bankrupt. Because of what you did? The whole family is blaming me. They say I'm incompetent, that I let my wife control all the money." I listened as a chill spread through me. Not a single word about my feelings, not a single word about our son being abandoned. It was all about the contract, the company, his male pride. "So what do you think?" I asked. He hesitated. I know they were wrong yesterday, but Amy, they're still family. You're being too harsh. They can't handle it. I'm stuck in the middle." I laughed, but there was no joy in it. "You're stuck in the middle? Then where do your son and I stand?" He froze. I looked him straight in the eye and said slowly, "Henry, yesterday, if you had walked onto that stage, just put your hand on my shoulder and said one sentence times, 'My family is running late. I apologize on their behalf,' times just that. Would you have done it?" He bowed his head. I continued, my voice even. "Today, when your mother yelled at me through the intercom and your sister called me insolent, did you defend me?" He was silent. I nodded. "That's enough." Henry quickly took a step forward. "Amy, don't be like this. I didn't defend you because I don't love you. I don't want the family to fall apart." I held Leo tighter. My voice dropped. "The family already fell apart the moment you left me alone in that ballroom. Our family isn't breaking because of a contract. It's breaking because you didn't choose your wife and son." He stood there, stunned. I put Leo down in his crib and came back to sit across from him. For the first time in years, I spoke to him slowly, clearly, as if delivering a verdict. "Henry, I didn't cancel the contract for revenge. I canceled it because I no longer trust them. I don't trust Tyler's competence. I don't trust your mother's decency. And I don't trust that you have the backbone to protect our little family." He choked out. "I can talk to Mom. To Vanessa, get them to apologize to you." I shook my head. "I don't need their apology. I need you to answer one question." He looked up. "If tomorrow your mother and sister forced you to choose on one side, me and Leo, and on the other, their family and Tyler's contract, who would you choose?" The question hung in the air like a stone. I watched him without blinking. He opened his mouth, then closed it again. I could see the panic in his eyes, not the panic of losing his wife, but the fear of losing his mother, of being labeled a disrespectful son, of being ostracized by his relatives. A minute passed, then 2. Finally, he whispered, "Amy, please don't make me choose." My heart ached, but only for a moment. I nodded, as if I'd known all along. "Then you've already chosen." He flinched. "No, Amy, I haven't." I cut him off. "When you don't choose your wife and child, you have already chosen them." The air in the room was so thick I could hear the clock ticking. Leo stirred in his crib, letting out a soft whimper as if sensing the tension. I went to pick him up, turning my back to Henry. "Go back to your mother's house, Henry. You can't help anything here anymore." He was horrified. "You're kicking me out?" "No," I replied. "I'm sending you back to where you belong." He stood silently, then suddenly dropped to his knees in front of me. I froze. In 5 years of marriage, this was the first time he had ever kneeled, but I didn't feel moved. I only felt pain. "Amy, I'm begging you, for our son's sake, reinstate the contract. I promise. I'll be different from now on." I looked at the man kneeling at my feet. I suddenly remembered our wedding day. He had held my hand, trembling, and promised to shelter me from the rain. Now, at the first sign of a storm, he was hiding behind his mother. I spoke very softly. "Get up, Henry. Kneeling before me won't make you a better father," he cried, real tears. His sobs were choked, masculine, and broken. But in those sobs, I didn't hear a single apology to our son, only pleas for me to save times his time's family. I turned away. Go home. I'm tired. He wouldn't move, still kneeling. Amy, if you don't reinstate the contract, my mother will force me to divorce you. I whipped around to look at him. Well then, that's better. At least we can stop beating around the bush. He was stunned. Listen to me carefully, I said, enunciating every word. If we get divorced, it won't be because I destroyed your family. It will be because you are not fit to be a husband or a father. With that, I carried Leo into the bedroom and closed the door, leaving him alone in the living room. He sat out there until almost morning, then left quietly. The next morning, just after I had finished feeding Leo, my phone rang. It was my father. Amy, some people from your husband's family came to see your mother and me this morning. I tensed. What did they say, Dad? Carol and Vanessa came. They were crying, saying you canceled the contract and made their whole family suffer. Carol even said you look down on the paternal side of the family and won't let your grandson acknowledge his relatives. Hearing that, my heart seized. They had started to attack my most vulnerable point, my son. What did you say? My father's voice was low but steady. I told them straight. The boy is my grandson, but he's their grandson too. If you want to acknowledge him, you must first learn to respect his mother. No one has the right to use a child as a bargaining chip for a contract. Tears welled in my eyes. Thank you, Dad, I whispered. My father sighed. Daughter, I can see it now. That family isn't simple. You need to think carefully about your next steps. After hanging up, I sat in silence for a long time. I knew that from this day forward, the fight would no longer be about a contract. It would shift to something much more terrifying. The rights of the paternal grandparents, the right to claim a grandchild, the right to interfere in my son's life. And just as I predicted, that afternoon, my mother-in-law called again. This time, her tone was completely different, so soft it was artificial. Amy, I visited your parents this morning. After talking with them, I've had some time to think. I was a bit hot-headed yesterday. Let's just forget about it. Reinstate the contract for Tyler. I promise, from now on, I'll treat Leo like gold. The phrase, treat Leo like gold, made my blood run cold. I asked very quietly, are you planning to treat Leo like gold, or the contract like gold? She paused for a second, then gave a forced laugh. You're being unfair to me, dear, I continued in an even tone. If you want to acknowledge your grandson, you have to acknowledge his mother too. Can you do that? Silence on the other end. I added, calmly. If you still see me as just a woman who needs to be patient, then don't expect to teach my son how to be a decent human being. She started to cry for real, a choked, self-pitying sound. You're so cruel. He's my only grandson. I closed my eyes. My heart ached, but my mind was clear. Precisely because he is your only grandson, you should never have abandoned him in front of the world. I hung up. That evening, Henry texted me. Asterisk, my mom says if you don't reinstate the contract, she will file for visitation rights. Asterisk, I stared at the message, my heart sinking. I knew they were ready to drag the law into this to pressure me. But I also knew Leo was with me. I had done nothing wrong. I was not afraid. I carried my son out to the balcony and watched the city lights come on. I whispered to him, Leo, honey, I won't stop anyone from loving you, but I will not let anyone use you to trade for money. And I understood that from tomorrow on, things would enter a new phase. It would no longer be a struggle over a contract, but a struggle over a child. From that night on, I lived in a strange state of being, both calm and taut as a violin string. On the surface, the house was quiet. My son slept well, and I went to work, attended meetings, and signed documents as if nothing had happened. But inside, I knew my in-laws wouldn't give up so easily. They were used to holding the knife. Now that I had taken it from them, they would find a way to stab me back, regardless of who was right or wrong. The next morning, I dropped Leo off at my mother's. She took him from my arms, her eyes searching mine. I smiled and said I was just heading to work for a bit and would be back soon, but in my heart, I knew today might not be peaceful. Sure enough, Just after 9 a.m., my secretary informed me that I had a visitor who claimed to be family. I glanced at the security monitor in the company lobby. Vanessa stood there, dressed immaculately, holding a designer handbag, her face a mask of ice. Beside her was a middle-aged man who looked like a lawyer. I took a breath and told my secretary to send them up. Vanessa walked in and immediately scanned my office, her eyes filled with unconcealed displeasure. She sat in the chair opposite me without a greeting and pulled a stack of papers from her bag. "Amy, I'll be direct to save time. My mother didn't want to make a scene, but you've pushed her too far. This is a letter of authorization from Henry, retaining this lawyer to advise on securing visitation rights for Leo." I looked from the papers to the man. He gave a slight nod, his voice professionally measured. "Miss Davis, by law, the paternal side of the family has the right to visit the child. If you obstruct this, your in-laws can file a petition with the court." I wasn't angry. I was just sad that they had resorted to this so quickly. I asked calmly, "Does Henry know you two are here today?" Vanessa smirked. "My brother knows. He's miserable, and you're the one who put him in this position." "What kind of wife are you?" I nodded slowly. "So he agrees to let his family use our son as leverage against me." Vanessa laughed coldly. "Don't try to sound so noble. He's our family's grandchild. We have rights." I looked her straight in the eye, my voice dropping. "Let me make something perfectly clear to you. He is my son and Henry's son, not the collective property of your family," the lawyer interjected, trying to mediate. "Miss Davis, it's best if both parties can come to an agreement. The family doesn't want this to become a public matter, but if you maintain this hardline stance, it could be disadvantageous for you." I let out a small laugh. "Disadvantageous how? I've raised my son since birth. I'm not preventing visitation, but I will not allow anyone to use their rights as a grandmother or an aunt to force me into a business deal." Vanessa slammed her hand on the table. "Are you still talking about the contract? Have a heart. Tyler is about to go bankrupt, you know that?" I replied, "I do. And that is not my responsibility." The air in the room grew thick. The lawyer looked at me, his tone softening. "Miss Davis, you should think about the long term. If this goes to court, your marriage, your income, your time spent caregiving, everything will be scrutinized. No one wants their private life aired out in public." I looked at him slowly. "It's precisely because I don't want my private life aired out in public that I hope you will go back and tell my family one thing. Do not use a child to trade for money." Vanessa shot to her feet, her face flushed with anger. "Don't think you can do whatever you want just because you have money. You've disgraced our entire family." I stood up too. For the first time, my voice rose slightly. "The disgrace to your family wasn't caused by me. It happened the moment your entire family abandoned their grandson in a hotel ballroom." Vanessa was speechless. I pointed to the door. "If you came here to have a civil discussion about visiting my son, I'm willing to listen. But if you came here to threaten me, I'm done." The lawyer stood up first and pulled Vanessa away. Before she left, she turned back and threw one last dagger of a line at me. "You just watch out. My mother won't let this go." After the door closed, I finally collapsed into my chair. Only then did my hands start to shake. Not because I was afraid of them, but because I understood that from now on, everything would be dragged into the light. My marriage, my child, and all the things I had tried so hard to keep private. "Later," Henry called. His voice was utterly exhausted. "Amy, why did you let Vanessa come to your office? Mom found out." I laughed without humor. "I didn't let times her. Your sister came on her own," he sighed. "Amy, please, don't push things any further. Mom has been crying non-stop. She said if you don't reinstate the contract, she'll consider this daughter-in-law lost to her." I was silent for a moment, then asked, "And what about you?" He faltered. I'm in the middle." I cut him off. "Don't say that anymore. I'm tired of hearing it." He lowered his voice. "Amy, I'm begging you, for our son, soften up a little." I replied, "It's precisely because of our son that I can't soften up." He was silent. I continued very slowly. "Henry, do you know what I'm most afraid of? It's not the court. It's your family. Because they don't truly love our son, they love their own interests more." He choked out, "My mother loves her grandson." I gave a sad smile. She loves him, yet she abandoned him? She loves him, yet she uses him to threaten his own mother? I don't dare accept that kind of love. He was quiet for a long time, then asked, If my mother really files a petition, what will you do?" I looked out the window, where the afternoon sun cast a golden glow on the buildings. "I will go to court," I said, "and I am not afraid." That evening, I went to my parents' house to pick up Leo. My mother held him but kept looking at me with worry. My father poured tea, his voice slow. "Any news from their side, dear?" I told them about Vanessa and the lawyer. My mother gasped. "My goodness, they would really do that?" My father grew pensive. "Don't panic. The law is on the side of the primary caregiver. Just stay strong." I nodded, but in my heart, I knew this wasn't just about the law. It was about humanity. And that was something I was rapidly losing from my in-laws. That night, when I got home with Leo, I found Carol already sitting in my living room. She wasn't with Vanessa or Tyler this time, just her, alone. Her hair was pulled back neatly, she wore a dark blouse, and her face was etched with fatigue. I froze. She stood up, her voice completely different from before, not shouting, not acidic, just hoarse. "Amy, I came to talk to you." I put my bag down, took Leo straight to his room and put him in his crib, then came back out. I didn't offer her a drink. I just sat down across from her. She looked around the house, her gaze lingering on the crib, and her voice softened. "Does the baby sleep well?" "He does," I replied. She was quiet for a moment, then let out a long sigh. "Amy, I was wrong. The day of the party, I was wrong. I didn't realize how much it would hurt you." It was the first time I had heard her say the word wrong without anger or denial. My heart stirred slightly, but I remained silent. She continued, her voice growing smaller. "I didn't abandon my grandson because I don't love him. I was caught up with relatives, with keeping up appearances. I thought you would understand." I asked very quietly, "Did you ever think about me standing there alone, holding my son?" She bowed her head. "I did. Afterwards, I thought about it, and I felt terrible. I looked at her for a long time. In that moment, I didn't see her as my mother-in-law, but as an old woman who was also afraid of losing face, afraid of what people would say. But I also knew that her regret might not be enough to overcome the greed of her entire family." She looked up, her voice trembling. "Amy, I'm begging you, reinstate the contract for Tyler. He's Vanessa's husband. If his business collapses, their family falls apart. I promise. From now on, I won't interfere in your marriage. I'll treat Leo like a treasure." I closed my eyes. The conversation had circled right back to where it started, the contract. I opened my eyes and said slowly, "Mom, if Tyler didn't have this contract issue today, would you be sitting here apologizing to me?" She was silent. I continued, my voice not accusatory, just sad. "Are you here for your grandson or for the $350,000? She burst into tears, real, unrestrained sobs. I'm in a terrible position, Amy. Tyler took out a loan in my name. If his company goes under, I'll lose my house." Those words struck me like a knife. It wasn't just about her son-in-law. Her own home was tied up in the contract I had canceled. I was stunned. I understood now. They didn't just need money. They needed me to save their entire family. "How much did you co-sign for?" I asked. She sobbed harder. "Over $100,000. I closed my eyes again. That amount was large enough to make a mother-in-law kneel before her daughter-in-law. I sat in silence for a long time, my mind racing. I thought of Leo sleeping peacefully, of Henry's helplessness, of my parents' quiet support. I understood that if I softened now, I could save my in-laws' family. But from that day forward, I would be living in a family that saw me not as a person, but as a life raft. I opened my eyes and looked at her, speaking very slowly. "Mom, I feel for you. I truly do. But I cannot reinstate that contract." She looked stunned. I continued, "I am not a bank. I cannot use my company to carry the debt for my entire extended family. And I certainly cannot teach my son that the way to be loved is to trade yourself for money," she cried out. "So you want me to die?" That felt like a bolt of lightning. I shot to my feet, my voice trembling but clear. "Don't say that, Mom. I'm not killing anyone. The people who put you in this situation are Tyler and Vanessa, with their reckless borrowing. It wasn't me." She sobbed uncontrollably, unable to stand steady. I helped her sit back down, my voice softening. "Go home, Mom. Get some rest. I won't change my mind about the contract, but I won't forbid you from seeing your grandson. If you want to visit Leo, my door is open." She looked at me, her eyes a mixture of resentment and helplessness. "You are too hard." "No, Mom," I replied. "I just don't want my son to grow up in a family that only knows how to use each other to survive." She stood up silently and walked to the door. Before leaving, she turned and said very quietly, "Amy, if this family falls apart, I will have failed our ancestors." I watched her go, my heart aching as if it were being squeezed. But I knew that some failures were not of my making. That night, I sat by Leo's crib for a long time. I knew that after today, my in-laws had no more soft approaches left, and their next move would likely be to force Henry to sign the papers. Just as I predicted, 2 days later, Henry came home again. This time, he didn't come in the dead of night, but in the middle of the afternoon. I had just finished bathing Leo when I heard the key in the lock. My heart tightened. There are moments when, no matter how prepared you are, you still can't help but tremble. He walked in holding a folder. His shirt was wrinkled, his tie was crooked, and his face was gaunt. He looked at me, his eyes pleading and fearful. "Amy, can we talk for a minute?" I put the towel down, picked Leo up, and replied curtly, "Go ahead." He looked down at the folder in his hands and swallowed hard. "Mom, she's making me sign this." I glanced over. "Just a glimpse, but I knew what it was." I asked calmly. "Divorce papers or power of attorney?" He froze. "Both." My heart clenched, but only for a beat. I nodded. "Continue." He sat down, his hands trembling as he opened the folder. "Mom said if I don't sign, she'll lose the house. She co-signed the loan. She can't handle it. Vanessa is crying. Tyler is hiding. I don't know what to do." I looked at him for a long time. I wasn't angry anymore. I just felt pity for a man who was too weak to carry the weight of any role he was given. "So, have you signed?" I asked. He shook his head, his eyes red. "No, I brought them home to show you first." "Good," I said. I put Leo in his crib and sat down across from him. I spoke slowly. "Henry, tell me the truth. If I reinstate the contract, your family will be saved. But what happens after that?" He was silent. "After that, Tyler will keep borrowing, Vanessa will keep depending on him, your mother will keep co-signing for them, and every time your family needs money, they'll come to me, and you'll tell me to be patient, for the sake of our son, for the sake of the family. Am I right?" He bowed his head. I knew I was right. I continued very quietly. "And what about me? What about my company? What about our son? If that project fails, who takes the fall?" He choked out, I will." A sad smile touched my lips. "With what? Is your monthly salary even enough to cover the interest on the loan?" He was speechless. I stood up, poured him a glass of water, and placed it in front of him. For the first time after days of tension, my voice was gentle. "Henry, I don't resent your mother or Vanessa, but I'm afraid of one thing. If I save your family today, I will lose my own tomorrow." He looked up, his eyes shimmering. "I know, but my mom, she threatened to kill herself. That left me speechless. I stood frozen, my hands gripping the edge of the table. "She said that?" He nodded, his voice breaking. "She said if she loses the house, she has nothing left to live for." My mind flashed back to her sobbing in my living room, saying she had failed their ancestors. I understood. They were using her life to corner me. I sat down very slowly, my voice dropping. "Henry, do you really believe that?" He looked stunned. "Believe what?" "That your mother will die because of my contract." He was silent. "Or," I continued, "is your mother just using your fear to force you to sign, to force me to bow my head?" He couldn't answer. I sighed, feeling both pity and exhaustion. Henry, if your mother is truly contemplating that today, the person who needs to worry is not me. It's you, and Vanessa, and a doctor. No one has the right to force me to risk my company, my son, and my entire life to buy a false sense of peace for your family. He cried, silent tears running down his face, his shoulders shaking. I'm a terrible son. I can't save my mother. I placed a hand on his shoulder, very gently. No. You are not the terrible one. The ones who are those who pushed their own mother into debt and then expected their daughter-in-law to carry the burden. He looked up at me, his eyes as lost as a child's. Amy, if I don't sign, my mom will kick me out of the house. I'll have nowhere to go. That sentence pierced my heart. I looked at him for a long time. In that moment, I realized that for the past 5 years, Henry had never truly had a home. At his mother's house, he was a son who had to obey orders. At my house, he was a husband who didn't dare to stand up for himself. He was always in the middle, belonging nowhere. Where do you want to go? I asked. He looked confused. Do you want to go back to your mother's house, where you have to sign divorce papers to save her? Or do you want to stay here, where you have a wife and son, but you have to have the courage to stand against them? He was silent for a very long time. I didn't push him. I knew this was the question that would define his entire life. Finally, he whispered, I'm scared. I nodded. I know, I continued, my voice slow, each word deliberate. But Henry, part of being a man is choosing which fear is greater, the fear of upsetting your mother, or the fear that your son will grow up without a real father. He trembled. I looked at him, my heart softening a little, but not weakening. You didn't bring these papers here to ask for my opinion. You brought them here because you didn't have the courage to sign them yourself. Am I right? He nodded, tears falling. Then, let me tell you my decision, I said, taking a deep breath. I am not reinstating the contract, and I am not signing divorce papers right now. But if you sign them because you were forced to, I will not take you back later. He panicked. Amy, don't I cut him off. I mean it. I will not keep a husband out of pity. I need a man who dares to stand with me. He looked at me, his eyes red. If I stand with you, my family will really fall apart. I replied, Your family is not falling apart because you stand with me. Your family is falling apart because they built it on debt and greed. He buried his face in his hands and sobbed. I let him cry. Sometimes tears have to fall for a person to see clearly. A long time later, he looked up, his voice hoarse. Amy, if I go back and tell my mother that I won't sign, that I choose my wife and son, will you believe me? I looked at him for a long time. My trust had been fractured, but I answered honestly, I will believe you if you do it. He nodded sharply, as if making a resolution. I'm going back to Mom's. I'll make it clear to her. I walked him to the door. Before leaving, he turned and looked at Leo in his crib for a long time. His gaze was different then, not fearful, but pained. He looks so much like you, he whispered. I nodded. He looks like you too, but I hope he doesn't inherit your weakness. He bowed his head and left. That night, I stayed awake. I didn't call or text. I waited for a decision that would determine not just his life, but mine as well. Around 3 a.m., my phone vibrated. A short text from Henry, but each word was like a hammer blow. Asterisk Amy. I told Mom I'm not signing. Asterisk. My heart seized. I called him immediately. His voice on the other end was hoarse and tired, but strangely calm. Mom cried. Vanessa screamed. Tyler slammed the table. Mom disowned me, called me a disrespectful son. She kicked me out. I closed my eyes. And then what? I left. I'm sitting in the parking lot in front of her building. Hearing that, tears streamed down my face. I whispered, Come home. He choked out, You'll still have me? I paused for a beat, then replied, Come home. Your son is sleeping. He broke down crying. This time, he wasn't crying out of fear, but out of relief at finally having chosen. Around 4 a.m., he arrived. I opened the door. He stood there, with nothing but a small backpack. I looked at him and felt a strange surge of compassion. A man kicked out of his own mother's house for choosing his wife and child. He walked in and looked around the house as if it were his last refuge. I handed him a blanket and pointed to the sofa. "You can sleep here for now." He nodded without protest. Before I went to my room, I turned back and said very quietly, "Henry, I can't promise I'll forget everything, but today you did the right thing. I acknowledge that." He looked at me, his eyes tired but bright. I went into my room and sat by Leo's crib. He was sleeping soundly, unaware of how his world was changing. I gently touched his cheek and whispered, "Honey, today, your father chose you." But in my heart, I knew that choosing today didn't guarantee he could hold on tomorrow. My in-laws had run out of soft approaches. They wouldn't stop. And when they couldn't sway me or break Henry, they would likely find another way, one that was deeper and more insidious. That night, neither Henry nor I slept much. He was on the sofa, I was in the bedroom. Only a thin door separated us, but it felt like the distance of our entire past life. I could hear him tossing and turning, his muffled sighs, an occasional cough he tried to suppress so as not to wake Leo and me. Near dawn, Leo stirred and whimpered. I picked him up and went to the living room to make a bottle. The kitchen light was on, and I saw Henry still sitting on the sofa, his back against the cushions, his eyes bloodshot. He clearly hadn't slept at all. When he saw me, he shot up, fumbling. "Let me hold him." I looked at him for a second, then nodded. He took Leo, his movements clumsy but careful. The moment he was in his father's arms, Leo stopped crying, his eyes fluttering open to stare up at Henry. A faint smile touched Henry's lips, a rare sight after so many dark days. He recognizes me," he whispered, his voice trembling. I stood by the counter, mixing the formula, my heart softening just a little. There are moments when an apology isn't necessary. Just knowing you are still allowed to be a father is a form of redemption. After feeding and putting Leo back in his crib, I saw the first light of dawn breaking outside. I looked at Henry and said quietly, "Take the day off today." He nodded. "I already called in. I want to be home." I said no more. I knew today wouldn't be quiet. His mother would not let this rest. Sure enough, before 9 a.m., my phone rang. It was Carol. I took a deep breath and answered. Her voice was no longer tearful like before, but eerily cold. "Amy, come to my house," I replied calmly. "If you have something to say, Mom, you can say it over the phone." "This can't be said over the phone. It's important." She paused, then enunciated each word slowly. "I want to discuss the future of Henry and the baby." I gripped the phone tightly. "If you want to talk about your son and daughter-in-law, then be direct." She gave a dry laugh. "Don't worry, I'm not going to eat you alive. I just want to know how long you plan on keeping Henry." That sentence chilled me to the bone. I glanced over at Henry, who was standing near the kitchen, his expression anxious. "Henry is my husband. Whether I keep him or not is not for you to decide." Her voice turned sharp. "Then you bring him back to my house right now. I will not have my son hidden away by his wife." A small smile played on my lips, though a storm was raging inside me. "Mom, this is my home, and Henry's home. I'm not hiding anyone." She was silent for a few seconds, then said something that left me stunned. "In that case, I'll come over to see my grandson this afternoon." I froze. "I'm coming to see my grandson. I have the right to visit him, don't I? Or are you afraid that if I see him, I won't let him go?" The call ended there. I lowered the phone, my hand ice cold. Henry looked at me, understanding immediately. "My mother. She's coming this afternoon," I said flatly. His face turned pale. "Amy, maybe I should take Leo to your parents for a few days." I shook my head. "No need. Hiding won't solve anything. We have to face this sooner or later." He bowed his head, his voice small. "I'm afraid Mom will make a scene." I looked at him and said slowly, "If you stand behind me again today, silent while they cause chaos, then everything that happened last night will mean nothing." He flinched and looked straight at me. His eyes panicked, then gradually hardened. I will stand with you." I nodded. "I believe you. But remember, if you take even one step back, I'm letting go." That afternoon at 3 p.m. sharp, the doorbell rang. I checked the camera. Carol and Vanessa were outside. They were both well dressed, but their faces were tense. I opened the door. Carol walked in first, her eyes sweeping the house as if inspecting her territory. Vanessa followed, her lips pressed into a thin line. "I came to see my grandson," Carol said coldly. "Of course. Please come in," I replied politely, and brought Leo out of his crib. Her expression softened the moment she saw him. She reached for him, her voice suddenly gentle. "Come to Grandma, let me see my little boy." I let her hold him but stood close by. Vanessa stood beside them, looking at the baby with a mixture of curiosity and resentment. After a moment, Carol sat down, holding the baby, and sighed. "Amy, I don't want things to be tense, but you have to understand, our family is in a very difficult position." I sat opposite her, keeping my voice steady. "I understand, but I cannot let personal feelings interfere with a business matter." Her eyes narrowed. "You say that so easily. But without that contract, my family loses everything. I'm old. I can't bear the thought of becoming a renter." I softened my tone. "I'm willing to help you find a better place to live, or even help with some of the rent, but I am not reinstating the project." Vanessa shot to her feet. "How can you say that? My family loses our home, and you think offering to help with rent makes it okay?" I looked directly at Vanessa. "Your husband is the one who caused this problem. No one forced you and Tyler to sign those loan papers." Vanessa's face flushed. "But you're the wealthiest one in the family. If you don't help, who will?" That drew a sad smile from me. "Being the wealthiest doesn't mean I have to carry everyone else's burdens." Carol placed Leo back in his crib and turned to Henry, her voice trembling. "Henry, speak. Do you really want to abandon your mother?" Henry stood up, his fists clenched, his voice hoarse. "Mom, I'm not abandoning you, but I can't force my wife to do something wrong." She looked at him, tears streaming down her face. "So you'd let me die on the street?" My heart ached, but I didn't speak. This was his moment. Henry walked forward and knelt before his mother. The sight stunned me. He bowed his head, his voice choked. "Mom, I'm begging you, stop using your life to pressure me. I'm a terrible son for not being able to save our family, but I can't be a terrible husband and father for the rest of my life." Carol was speechless. Vanessa was also frozen. "I raised you for 30 years, and now you choose your wife over your mother," she sobbed. Henry shook his head, tears falling. "I'm choosing to be a husband and a father, Mom. I'll work extra jobs to help pay back the debt with you, but I will not trade my son's future for it." The room was utterly silent. I looked at him, and for the first time in my life, I saw Henry truly stand tall. Carol stared at her son for a long time, then turned to me. Her eyes filled with a mix of resentment and helplessness. "Amy, do you really have no sense of family obligation left?" I replied quietly. "I have enough obligation left that I haven't sued for damages, that I haven't let Tyler go to jail. But I cannot sacrifice my child." Vanessa burst into tears. "You're so cruel. You've destroyed my family." I looked at Vanessa, my heart turning to ice. "Your family isn't destroyed because of me. Your family is destroyed because you trusted the wrong person." The tension was suffocating. Finally, Carol stood up, hugged Leo, and kissed his forehead for a long time before handing him back to me. She looked at me, her voice weary. "Fine. I won't force you anymore. I guess I'm just not blessed enough." With that, she turned and walked out. Vanessa shot me a resentful glare and followed. The door closed. I stood in silence for a long time, my heart pounding. Henry was still kneeling on the floor, his shoulders shaking. I walked over and helped him up. "Get up. Your son is watching." He buried his face in his hands and cried like a child. "Amy, I'm afraid my mother will hate me for the rest of her life." I placed a hand on his shoulder, my voice low. "Maybe. But if you hadn't done this today, your son would have hated you for the rest of his life." He looked at me, his eyes filled with gratitude and pain. That evening, I received a text from Vanessa. Just 3 words. Asterisk, you won. Asterisk, I stared at the screen for a long time, then deleted it. In my heart, I knew this wasn't the end. People like Vanessa, Tyler, and Carol, when their soft approach failed, they would find a hard one. And this time, their target might not be money, but my son, my reputation, and the very peace I was fighting so hard to protect. After Carol and Vanessa left, the house fell into a strange quiet. It wasn't a comfortable peace, but the unnerving calm of the sea before a storm. I knew there was an undercurrent churning below, waiting for the slightest touch to erupt. For 3 straight days, my in-laws didn't call, text, or visit. Henry received no more calls from his mother either. That silence didn't reassure me. It made me more anxious. On the evening of the 3rd day, as I was rocking Leo to sleep, my phone rang. An unknown number. I hesitated for a second, then answered. "Is this Amy Davis?" A man's low, raspy voice, unfamiliar. "Yes, this is she. My name is Lamb. I'm an old business acquaintance of Tyler's." Just hearing Tyler's name made my heart skip a beat. I kept my voice steady. "Why are you calling me?" There was a pause on the other end. Then he spoke slowly. "Do you have any idea how much your brother-in-law owes people?" I frowned. "That has nothing to do with me." "It does now," he said, his voice dropping, "because people are starting to ask about you." I shot to my feet, my heart pounding. "What do you mean? Tyler owes over $200,000 to loan sharks. He can't pay. The creditors are asking around, and they've heard you're the only one in the family with money and a company. They're looking for ways to approach you." A chill ran down my spine. "Approach me how?" "To apply pressure. Gently at first, with threats. If that doesn't work, it's hard to say. I'm calling to give you a heads up, out of respect for our old connection." I gripped the phone tightly. "Thank you for telling me." The call ended. I stood frozen in the middle of the room, a cold sweat breaking out on my back. It seemed the hard approach I had feared was beginning. That night, I told Henry everything. His face went pale as he jumped to his feet. I had no idea about this. I looked at him for a long time. "Henry, from now on, I need you to be completely clear-headed. Do not hide anything from me related to your family. Not one single thing." He nodded fiercely, his voice trembling. "I swear," I sighed. "Starting tomorrow, I'm increasing security, changing the times I drop off and pick up our son, and limiting unfamiliar visitors. And you are not to let anyone know Leo's schedule." He took my hand and squeezed it hard. "I will protect you and Leo." I looked at him, feeling both warmth and worry. Promises are easy to make, but reality is what truly tests a person. 2 days later, the first incident occurred. I was in a meeting at work when the nanny called, her voice frantic. "Miss Amy, a little while ago, 2 men were standing outside the gate asking about the family. They said they were relatives from the paternal side, but they looked suspicious, so I didn't let them in." My heart hammered against my ribs. "Are they gone?" "They're gone now, but they stood out there staring for a long time." I immediately excused myself from the meeting and drove home. On the way, my hands were shaking so much I could barely hold the steering wheel. Only one thought consumed me. If they dared to come near my son, I would no longer be gentle. When I got home, I checked the security cameras, the gate, and all the locks. Henry had also left work early. That entire afternoon, we barely let Leo out of our sight. That evening, after Leo was asleep, Henry sat before me, his voice heavy. "Amy, I think Tyler must be behind this. I'm afraid they want to use our son to pressure you." Hearing that, I felt the blood rush to my head. If they really dare to do that, I will no longer consider them family. Henry bowed his head, his voice choked. "I'm sorry for bringing this trouble into your life." I looked at him and said slowly, "Henry, from the moment you chose to stand with me, this trouble is no longer just mine, it's ours. The important thing is whether you have the strength to walk with me to the end." He looked up, his eyes red but determined. "I do. Even if I lose everything, I won't let them touch our son." For the first time, I truly believed him. The next morning, I went to my office early and met privately with my head of legal. I was direct. "I need you to investigate all loans, companies, and assets registered under Tyler and Vanessa's names. I want to know exactly how much danger they're in." He was a bit surprised but nodded. "Of course. I'll have someone on it immediately." That afternoon, I received another strange call. This time, it was a woman's voice, artificially sweet. Amy, dear, I'm a close friend of Vanessa's. I'm calling to give you a little advice. I laughed coldly. If you're Vanessa's friend, I doubt you're calling with my best interests at heart, she chuckled. You're a smart one. I'll be blunt. Her family is in deep trouble. If Tyler can't pay his debts, people won't leave them alone. Just think, if something were to happen to the little one. My hand clenched into a fist, my voice turning to ice. Are you threatening me? Not at all. Just a reminder. A smart woman knows when to be flexible. I cut her off. Go back and tell Vanessa and Tyler one thing. If a single hair on my son's head is harmed, I will make sure they have no future, not in society, and not in a courtroom. With that, I hung up. My hands were still shaking, but my resolve had hardened like steel. That evening, my head of legal sent me a thick file. I opened it, and each line I read felt like a paper cut. Tyler didn't just owe $200,000. The total was closer to $300,000, high-interest loans from shady sources, some with ties to organized crime. Some of the money was from failed investments, but a large portion was from gambling. I put the file down and took a deep breath. The pit my in-laws had fallen into was far deeper than I had imagined, and what they needed wasn't a $350,000 contract. They needed someone to take on a mountain of debt. Henry sat beside me, reading each page, his face growing paler. My God, how could he? I looked at him. Now do you understand why I didn't reinstate the contract? He nodded, his eyes red. If you had, you would have gone down before they did. I nodded grimly. And our son would have grown up buried in debt and fear. I couldn't sleep that night. I lay staring at the ceiling, listening to the steady rhythm of my son's breathing in his crib, my heart filled with both worry and love. I wasn't afraid of losing money. I was afraid of losing my son, of losing the small family I had just managed to hold together. Near dawn, my phone vibrated. A text from Vanessa. Amy, I'm begging you. Please save us this one time. If not, Tyler is really going to die. I stared at the message for a long time, and tears fell before I even realized it. Not because I felt sorry for Vanessa, but because I understood that when people are pushed to the brink, they are capable of anything. I didn't reply right away. I picked Leo up, kissed his forehead, and whispered, Honey, Mommy won't let anyone take away your peace, even if it means she has to become the bad guy. But in my heart, I knew that from this moment on, I wasn't just fighting my in-laws anymore. I was stepping into a real war, where one wrong move could shatter my little family. After Vanessa's desperate text, I didn't reply immediately. I put my phone down, held Leo, and sat by the window for a long time. It was early, a thin mist cloaking the rooftops across the street. The neighborhood was quiet, but my heart was not, beating a heavy rhythm against my ribs. I knew that if I softened now, everything I had fought to protect would collapse. But if I was too hard, the consequences might extend beyond money. Henry woke to find me sitting there with our son, my expression heavy. He came over and asked softly, Vanessa texted again? I nodded. He sighed, his voice hoarse. She said Tyler is being threatened. If they don't get the money this week, they'll... He left the sentence unfinished, but I understood. I looked at him and asked very slowly, Henry, if I don't help, will you resent me? He stared at me for a long moment, then shook his head. No, I'll only resent myself for letting my family sink this deep. I nodded slowly. Good, I need you to remember that. No matter what happens, I don't want you to ever look at me with resentment. He took my hand and squeezed it. I promise. That afternoon, I called Vanessa myself. Where are you? I asked directly. Vanessa was taken aback for a second, then answered quietly, I'm at my mom's. 4 o'clock. Meet me at the Ann Locke coffee shop on Main Street. Come alone, I instructed. And don't tell anyone. Vanessa was silent for a beat, then her voice filled with hope. Amy, are you going to help me? We'll talk when you get there, I said coldly, and hung up. I turned to Henry. I'm meeting Vanessa this afternoon. His face paled. It's too dangerous. I'm coming with you. I shook my head. No. I need to speak to her honestly. If you're there, she'll put on an act. He grabbed my hand, worried. Amy, what if they try something? I managed a faint smile. Don't worry. Right now, they need my money more than my life. At 4 p.m., I arrived at the coffee shop 10 minutes early and chose a secluded table with my back to the wall, giving me a clear view of the entrance. I didn't want any surprises. Vanessa arrived 5 minutes later. The moment she saw me, her eyes welled up. She rushed over and grabbed my hand, her voice trembling. Amy, please, you have to save us this time. I pulled my hand away and motioned to the chair. Sit down. Vanessa sat, tears streaming down her face. You don't understand. They came to our house. They threatened to break Tyler's hands. I looked straight at her, my voice calm. Crying won't solve anything, Vanessa. Tell me the whole truth. She bit her lip and spoke through sobs. At first, Tyler only borrowed a little for his business. It failed, so he took out high-interest loans. And then, he started betting on sports. By the time I found out, it was almost $300,000. Who introduced him to that? I asked. She shook her head. I don't know. Some friends from his social circle. I took a deep breath. How much are they demanding now? 100,000. This week. If not, they'll take the house and they won't let him go. I was silent for a long time. $100,000. The amount wouldn't bankrupt me, but it was enough to drag me down with them if I wasn't careful. Do your mother and the rest of the family know? I asked. She gave a bitter laugh. They all know. Mom has been crying nonstop. I'm sure Henry knows too. I nodded. So you came here to ask me for a loan? She nodded eagerly. Yes, please, just lend it to us. We'll sign a contract. We'll pay you back slowly. I looked at her, my heart cold. How do you guarantee you can pay it back? She choked. I'll get a job. We'll sell the house, the car. I'll pay you back. I shook my head. Your house is already mortgaged. So is the car. What will you pay me back with? Vanessa was silent. I spoke slowly, enunciating every word. Vanessa, listen to me. I can save Tyler this one time, but I can't save your lives. She looked up, her eyes desperate. But if you don't save him this time, he'll really die. That pierced my heart. My voice dropped. Do you think I have no compassion? But let me ask you one question. If I give you the money today, will Tyler stop gambling tomorrow? Vanessa was speechless. 3 months from now, 5 months from now, if he borrows again, will you come crying to me again? I pressed. She bowed her head, unable to answer. I sighed. Vanessa, I am not lending you the money. She broke down, sobbing. Amy, you're so cruel. Do you want my husband to die? I bit my lip, trying to stay calm. I don't want anyone to die, but I cannot gamble my son's life on your husband's habits. Vanessa looked at me, her expression shifting from pleading to resentment. So what are you going to do? Just watch us die? I looked straight at her, my voice slow but firm. I will help, in my own way. Vanessa was stunned. What way? Tonight, you bring Tyler to my house, I said. I will speak to him directly. If he dares to sign something for me, I will help. Her eyes widened. Sign what? A commitment to get help for his gambling addiction, to hand over all his bank accounts and property deeds for me to manage, and to agree to let me control your finances for the next 3 years, I said clearly. And one more condition. If he violates this agreement, I will immediately report his entire loan shark and gambling operation to the police. No more second chances. Vanessa was speechless. You want to control our lives? I gave a bitter smile. No, I'm buying safety for my son, and for you. Vanessa was silent for a long time, then burst into tears again. I'll go ask Tyler. Don't ask. I cut her off. Tell him, if he agrees, he comes. If not, that's it. And remember one thing. From now on, if anyone dares to touch my son, we will no longer be talking about family ties. Vanessa trembled and nodded. That night, around 10 p.m., my doorbell rang. I checked the camera. It was Vanessa and Tyler. He looked gaunt, with dark circles under his eyes, radiating an aura of pure panic. I opened the door and led them to the living room. Henry stood beside me, his face tense. The moment Tyler saw me, he dropped to his knees. Amy, please, save me. I made a terrible mistake. The sight stunned me for a second, then my heart turned to ice. I said calmly, "Get up. A man on his knees can't pay off debts." Tyler shakily got to his feet and sat down, his hands clasped tightly. I placed a stack of papers in front of him. "Read it." He picked it up, his face turning ashen as he read. You want me to give you control over all my money and assets? And if I relapse, you'll report me?" I nodded. "That's right." Tyler shook his head frantically. "But then I'll have nothing." I looked straight at him, my voice cold. "Tyler, you'll have your life, your wife, and a chance to start over. Which do you choose?" He trembled and looked at Vanessa. She was crying, but she nodded repeatedly. Henry, standing nearby, spoke in a low voice. "Tyler, listen to me. If you don't sign this, no one can save you." Tyler bowed his head, a tear falling onto the paper. After a long moment, he picked up the pen and signed his name. In that moment, I knew I had tied myself to a massive problem, but I had no other choice if I wanted to keep my son safe. After he signed, I was direct. "Tomorrow, I will transfer the money directly to your creditors. It will not pass through your hands, and from today, I will control all of your expenses." Tyler nodded like a puppet. Before they left, Vanessa took my hand, crying, I'm indebted to you." I looked at her for a long time and said slowly, "Vanessa, I'm not doing this for you. I'm doing this for my son, and because Henry had the courage to stand with me." After they left, the house was quiet again. Henry looked at me, his eyes full of worry and pity. "Amy, you just saved them, but you also just walked into a storm." I gave a sad smile. "I know, but if I don't walk into the storm, my son will be in the middle of it." That night, I sat by Leo's crib for a long time, listening to his steady breathing. I understood that this battle was just beginning, and my enemies now were not just my in-laws, but debt, greed, and people pushed to the absolute edge. After the night Tyler signed the agreement, my home entered a strange phase. The loud confrontations and tearful pleas were gone, but the air was constantly tense, like a string pulled to its breaking point. Every phone ring, every car that stopped out front, made my heart leap with a familiar dread. The next morning, as promised, I wired the money directly to Tyler's creditors. I left no loopholes, no room for error. Before transferring the funds, I had them sign a detailed receipt confirming they had received the full amount and would cease all forms of harassment and threats against Tyler's family. The man representing them looked at me for a long time, his eyes a mix of wariness and respect. He said something I'll never forget. "You're a rare kind of woman. You'll pay the money, but you won't let anyone lead you by the nose." I just gave a small, humorless smile. I wasn't as brave as he thought. I was just a mother terrified of losing her child. That afternoon, Tyler and Vanessa came to my house again. They brought everything: property deeds, car titles, bank cards, brokerage account information, even passwords to their emails and online banking. I sat at the table and reviewed each item, taking meticulous notes as if handling a major client's portfolio. Tyler sat opposite me, pale and quiet, his hands clasped, not daring to look up. Vanessa sat beside him, her eyes red and swollen, but her expression had changed. The resentment was gone, replaced by a mixture of fear and gratitude. I laid out the terms clearly. "From now on, I will provide you with a fixed monthly allowance for living expenses. Any expenditure over $100 must be cleared with me first. Tyler, you are not to carry more than $200 in cash. Where you go, what you do, who you associate with, I have the right to know." He nodded repeatedly, his voice hoarse. "Yes, Amy, I'll listen to you." I looked him straight in the eye. "I am not your mother, and I am not your boss, but I am the one holding the keys. If you want them back, you have to prove you've changed." Vanessa took her husband's hand and cried, "Tyler, please try. For our baby." Hearing the word baby, my heart ached. I knew Vanessa was 2 months pregnant. That child was as innocent as Leo. Perhaps that's what kept me from pushing them completely off the cliff. After they left, Henry sat beside me for a long time, his voice low. "Amy, you've just taken on another family." I gave a sad smile. No, I've just taken on another bomb, and now I have to keep it from exploding. He took my hand and held it tightly. You won't have to carry it alone anymore. I looked at him, and this time, I didn't doubt him. I just nodded. In the following days, things gradually settled. The creditors disappeared. My mother-in-law's house went quiet. Vanessa texted me regular updates and expense reports, obediently. Tyler started working again, a simple construction job, leaving early and coming home late, avoiding old friends and alcohol. On the surface, the storm had passed, but I knew the undercurrents were still there. A week later, I was at my office when the nanny called. Miss Amy, this morning a woman was at the gate saying she was the baby's grandmother and demanding to hold him. My blood ran cold. Did she get in? No, I didn't let her. But she stood outside crying. A lot of the neighbors were watching. I immediately drove home. From a distance, I could see my mother-in-law standing at the gate. Her hair was messy, her face was gaunt, and she was clutching a bag of toys, murmuring her grandson's name. Neighbors watched from their porches, whispering. The sight pained me. No matter what, she was my son's grandmother. I opened the gate. Mom, please come in. She looked at me, tears streaming down her face. Amy, I miss my grandson so much. I haven't been able to sleep. I led her into the living room and brought Leo out. The moment she saw him, she hugged him tightly and sobbed like a child. I stood by without stopping her, only saying quietly, "Please be gentle, Mom. He just woke up." She nodded, kissing his forehead, her voice trembling. I thought you'd never let me see him again." Hearing that, my heart softened. "I never forbade you, Mom. I just won't let anyone use my son to pressure me." She bowed her head and cried. "I was wrong. I was so wrong. These past few days, with Tyler nearly getting killed, I finally understand. Without you, this entire family would be ruined." I looked at her for a long time. In that moment, I saw a truly old woman terrified of losing everything, not the overbearing mother-in-law from before. "I don't want the family to fall apart," I said quietly, "but I also don't want my son to live in fear." She nodded repeatedly. "I understand. I won't dare pressure you anymore. I just ask that you let me visit my grandson." I nodded. "Of course. You can come whenever you like. But please, don't talk about money or Tyler and Vanessa's debts in front of him." She nodded, tears falling. "I promise." She stayed until the afternoon, holding Leo, speaking to him in soft tones, a world away from her former self. As she was leaving, she held my hand for a long time. "Amy, I owe you so much." I just gave a sad smile. "It's in the past now." But in my heart, I knew her change wasn't entirely out of love for me, but from the fear of losing her grandson and her last remaining support system. A few days later, another crisis erupted. That evening, while I was feeding Leo, Henry received a call from an unknown number. After he hung up, his face was ashen. "Amy, someone just called. They said if Tyler doesn't pay the rest of the interest he owes, they'll report his gambling ring to the police." I was startled. "How much does he owe?" "Almost $15,000 in penalty interest." I closed my eyes. The storm wasn't over. I immediately called Tyler. He confessed, trembling. "Yes, they're demanding more. They said it was an off-the-books amount." I gripped the phone, so angry my voice turned to ice. "Tyler, you lied to me. I was afraid you wouldn't help me anymore." That admission made my anger flare. "Listen to me carefully. I helped you once because you signed an agreement, but you lied to me, which means you are digging your own grave again." Tyler started sobbing. "Amy, please, help me one last time. I swear I'll quit for good." I was silent for a long time. $15,000 wasn't a huge sum for me, but what was terrifying wasn't the money, but the dishonesty. I turned to Henry and said slowly, "You see, when people get used to leaning on others, they forget how to stand on their own." Henry bowed his head, speechless. Finally, I made a decision. "Fine, I will pay it this time. But from today, Tyler, you are not allowed to live with Vanessa for the next 6 months." Tyler was stunned. "Amy, you're kicking me out?" "Not kicking you out. It's the only way for you to break away from your old environment," I said, my voice firm. You will go to the countryside and stay with your uncle. You will work on his construction crew. 6 months with no cash, no smartphone, and no old friends. If you can do that, I will continue to honor my side of the deal." Vanessa burst into tears. "Amy, we're newlyweds. I'm pregnant." I looked at her, my heart aching but my voice firm. "It's precisely because you're having a child that I'm doing this. Otherwise, you two will be destroyed by debt before your baby is even born." In the end, they agreed. That night, after everything was settled, I sat alone in my office, looking at the signed agreements and transaction records. I suddenly realized that since my son was born, I hadn't had a single day to breathe easy. Henry came in and wrapped his arms around me from behind, his voice low. "Amy, I know you're carrying too much." I leaned my head against his chest, tears falling. "Henry, I'm afraid one day I won't have the strength to carry it all anymore." He held me tighter. "When that day comes, I will carry it with you." I closed my eyes, feeling both warmth and worry. I knew the road ahead was still long. And one thing was clear. From the moment I stepped in to save my in-laws, I was no longer an outsider looking in. I was part of the storm. After Tyler was forced to move to the countryside, his household fell quiet. Vanessa texted me regularly, reporting that her husband had arrived safely, was staying with his uncle, working as a laborer, and going to bed early. Every text ended with "*Thank you, Amy*". I rarely replied. I didn't need thanks. I needed them to keep their word. But the quieter things became, the more uneasy I felt. Years in business had taught me that the biggest waves often come after the water is eerily calm. One morning, after dropping Leo off at my parents' and returning to the office, my secretary came in, her voice hesitant. "Miss Amy, there's a gentleman who has been waiting in the lobby since early this morning. He says he needs to see you urgently." I glanced at my packed schedule, about to refuse, but when she handed me his business card, my heart tightened. Economic Crimes Division, Financial Crimes Investigation Unit, *. I stood silently for a few seconds, then said, "Send him in." The man who entered was tall and stern-faced, his eyes sharp but not cold. He introduced himself as Detective Miller, his voice deep and professional. "Miss Davis, I'm not here to arrest you. I just need to ask you a few questions regarding your brother-in-law, Tyler, and some of his outstanding loans." I clenched my hands under the desk but kept my composure. "Please, ask away." Detective Miller opened a file and looked directly at me. "Were you aware that Tyler was involved in a major sports betting ring?" I nodded. I was. "I helped him pay off a portion of his debt." He nodded slightly. "We're aware of that. But were you aware that a portion of the $100,000 you transferred ended up in the hands of a group currently under investigation for money laundering?" My heart hammered. "Are you saying the money I transferred is connected to a criminal case?" "Not directly," he said slowly, "but you inadvertently helped them cover their tracks." Those words were like a cold blade. I was silent for a long time, then asked, "Have I broken the law?" He looked at me, his gaze softening slightly. "Not at this time. You transferred the money to settle a debt, and you have clear documentation. But if you continue to pay on his behalf, to cover for him, you could be considered an accessory to financial crimes." I closed my eyes. My worst fear had come to pass. "What do you want from me?" I asked quietly. "We need your cooperation," Detective Miller said bluntly. "Tyler is a small piece of the puzzle, but he could lead us to the entire operation. To do that, we need you to stop saving him." A sad laugh escaped me. "Do you think I save him because I care about him? I do it because I'm afraid for my son's safety." He looked at me for a long time, then said something that made me freeze. "It's precisely because you keep saving him that your son is now on their radar." I was speechless. "We've logged several suspicious calls and a few strangers loitering near your residence," he continued. "It's not an immediate danger yet, but if you keep injecting cash, you will become their primary target." A chill ran down my spine. The men at the gate, the strange calls, it wasn't my imagination. "What do I have to do?" I asked. "Cease all financial support. Let Tyler face the consequences. And if you're willing, provide us with all the signed agreements, transfer histories, and contact information for both him and Vanessa." I was silent for a long time. My mind flashed with images: Vanessa, pregnant and crying; Tyler, kneeling before me; my mother-in-law, holding her grandson with tears in her eyes. I had waded too deep into their lives. "If I cooperate," I asked slowly, "will Tyler be arrested?" Detective Miller nodded slightly. "It's highly likely, but his sentence could be reduced if he cooperates fully." I took a deep breath. "Give me a day to think about it." He nodded. "I'll wait for your answer. But remember, Miss Davis, the longer you delay, the more dangerous it becomes for your family." After he left, I sat in my office for a long time. Outside my window, the city bustled on, but my world felt like it was about to collapse. That afternoon, I didn't go straight home. I drove around the city for hours, aimlessly, just trying to escape the thoughts strangling me. Eventually, I found myself parked in front of my parents' house. My mother was on the porch, holding Leo. She was surprised to see me. "Amy, why are you home so early?" I took my son in my arms and kissed his cheek, my heart heavy. "Mom, if something ever happens to me, will you help take care of him?" My mother stared at me. "What are you talking about? What happened?" I shook my head, forcing a smile. "I'm just asking." She placed a hand on my shoulder, her expression serious. "Amy, don't hide it from me. I can see you're carrying something very heavy." Tears streamed down my face. I told her everything from Tyler's debts to the loan sharks to the visit from the economic crimes detective. As she listened, her face grew pale, and she pulled me into a tight hug. "Oh, my child, why must you go through so much?" she choked out. "I'm not afraid of losing money, Mom," I sobbed. "I'm just afraid I made a mistake and dragged my whole family into a legal nightmare." My mother wiped my tears, her voice firm. "Listen to me. When something involves the law, you stand on the side of the law. Don't throw away your life for a misplaced sense of family obligation." Her words were a sobering slap. That night, I told Henry everything. After listening, his face went white, and he staggered slightly. "My God. So all this time, you've been standing on the edge of a cliff." I nodded. "And if I keep saving them, I'll be the first to fall." He was silent for a long time, then took my hand and held it tight. "Amy, this time, I'm not asking you to save anyone. I'm asking you to save yourself and our son." Tears fell from my eyes. "If I give the police the files, Tyler will go to prison. Vanessa will have her baby alone. Your mother might have a breakdown." He closed his eyes, his voice trembling. "I know. It will be painful. But if we don't do this, our son will live his entire life in fear." I didn't sleep that night. I sat by Leo's crib until morning, watching the gentle rise and fall of his chest. I realized then that all this time I had been choosing to save others, but I had forgotten to save my own child. The next morning, I texted Vanessa, "I need to see Tyler. One last time. It's important." She replied immediately. "Okay. I'll bring him over this afternoon." That afternoon, when Tyler walked into my house, I looked at him for a long time. Gaunt, with hollow eyes and a hunched posture, he looked like a man on the brink. "Tyler," I said slowly, "I'll be direct. The police are investigating your gambling ring." He froze. What did you say?" "And I have to cooperate," I said, looking him straight in the eye. "If I don't, my family will be in danger." He collapsed into a chair, trembling. "So, I'm finished," I sighed. "No, you have one path left. Turn yourself in. Confess everything. I will hire the best lawyer for you. You might do time, but you will still have your life, a chance to start over, and your child." Tyler burst into tears, sobbing like a child. Vanessa, standing beside him, hugged him and cried silently. "Amy, you wouldn't send him to prison, would you?" she choked out. I looked at her, my heart breaking. "If I don't do this, Vanessa, my son will spend his life in the shadows." The room was silent for a long time. Finally, Tyler nodded, tears streaming down his face. "I'll turn myself in. Please, Just keep your promise to help my wife and child." I nodded. "I promise." After they left, I sank into a chair, completely drained. I knew that from this moment, there was no turning back. I had chosen the side of the law, the side of my son's safety, even if the price was the complete fracturing of my husband's family. And I understood that when Tyler went to prison, the real storm would begin. The next morning, I personally drove Tyler and Vanessa to the police headquarters, as arranged with Detective Miller. I didn't let Henry come. Not because I feared he'd be weak, but because I knew the sight would haunt him. Before walking through the gates, Tyler turned to me, his eyes red. "Amy, if I ever get out of this, I won't forget what you did for me." I looked at him and said slowly, "Tyler, you don't need to remember any favors. Just remember one thing. From now on, live an honest life. For your child." He nodded, tears falling, then turned and walked inside. Vanessa, clutching her stomach, followed him, trembling, without looking back. The iron gate clanged shut behind them, the sound as final as the closing of a chapter on a man's life. In that moment, I felt no triumph, no relief, only a strange emptiness. I knew my in-laws were about to enter a dark period, and I would become the person they hated most. And I was right. That afternoon, my mother-in-law called, her voice shaking with cold fury. "Amy, what have you done to Tyler?" I paused, then replied, "I let Tyler take responsibility for his own actions." A wail erupted on the other end. You're so cruel. You've pushed this entire family off a cliff." I closed my eyes, my voice low. "Mom, I didn't push anyone. I just refused to let them drag me and my grandson down with them. I'm an old woman. I can't survive this," she sobbed. That line had once softened me, but today it had no effect. "I'm sorry, Mom," I said softly, "but I cannot sacrifice my own child to preserve a family built on debt and crime." She screamed one last thing before hanging up. "From now on, I have no daughter-in-law." I put the phone down, my hand trembling. Even though I was prepared, her words still stung. Some relationships, once broken, can never be mended. That evening, Henry came home early. He walked in and wrapped me in a hug, saying nothing, just holding me tight. I knew he had heard the news. "Mom," she called me, he said, his voice hoarse. She cried. "She called me a disrespectful son. She cursed you. She said from now on, she considers me a stranger." I leaned my head against his chest, tears falling silently. "Do you regret it?" He was quiet for a long time, then shook his head. "It hurts, but I don't regret it. If we hadn't done this, our son would have lived his life in debt and fear." Hearing that, I hugged him tighter. I understood that from this moment on, he had truly chosen our little family. In the following days, events moved quickly. Tyler was detained for investigation. The betting ring was larger than anticipated, implicating several well-known local businessmen. The news reported on it, but my name was kept out, thanks to the discretion of the investigators and the lawyer I hired. Vanessa was released on bail due to her pregnancy, but was a nervous wreck. She sent me long, rambling texts, sometimes blaming me, sometimes apologizing, sometimes begging for help. I read them but replied only once. Asterisk. "Take care of yourself and the baby." Asterisk. My mother-in-law stopped all contact. She forbade Henry from bringing Leo to visit. He asked several times, but she always refused him coldly. I saw the sadness in his eyes but didn't press him. Some wounds need time to heal, or they never do. A month passed. Life slowly returned to a new normal. The creditors were gone. The strangers disappeared. Leo was growing fast, starting to babble his first sounds. Every time he laughed, I felt I had made the right choice. But a quiet anxiety lingered. Tyler's trial was approaching. A week before the trial, my mother-in-law showed up at my house unexpectedly. She came alone. She was thinner, her hair streaked with more gray. The moment she saw me, she burst into tears. "Amy, I'm begging you. Just this once. Talk to the police. Ask them to be lenient with him. He has a child on the way." I stood there, stunned. I had imagined this scene many times, but its reality was still a blow to the heart. "Mom," I said softly, "that's not something I can control. "You can," she cried. "If you hadn't reported him, he wouldn't be in jail. You saved him once, why can't you save him completely?" I looked at her. In that moment, I saw a truly desperate mother. But I also saw that in her desperation there was no thought for me, only for her son-in-law and her other grandchild. "Mom," I said slowly, "if I hadn't reported him that day, the person being arrested might have been me, or Henry, or all of us." She froze. "I cannot, for the sake of one person who made bad choices, put my entire family at risk," I continued, my voice shaking but clear. "I'm asking you, please don't ask me to break the law." She collapsed into a chair, sobbing like never before. "Then this family is truly finished." I sat down beside her and gently placed a hand on her shoulder. "No, Mom, it's not. Tyler is alive. He has a child. He has a chance to start over." She looked at me, her eyes filled with a mixture of resentment and helplessness. You're truly clever. You saved your own family by destroying someone else's." Her words cut deep, but I answered quietly, "If I hadn't, my family would have been destroyed first." She stood up silently and walked to the door without looking back. The image of her stooped, retreating back stayed with me for a long time, the silhouette of a woman carrying the weight of a shattered family. On the day of the trial, I didn't go. I sent my lawyer in my place, instructing him to plead for the most lenient sentence possible. That afternoon, Henry came home, looking exhausted. 3 years, reduced to 2.5 for his cooperation, he said. I sighed, my heart heavy. 2.5 years wasn't a lifetime, but it was long enough to change one. That night, Vanessa called me, sobbing. "Amy, they took him away. I don't know how I'm going to live." I closed my eyes. "Vanessa, you still have your child. Live for your child. Don't repeat your husband's mistakes." After hanging up, I sat by Leo's crib for a long time. He slept soundly, unaware of the tear-filled drama that had just concluded in a courtroom. Henry came and sat beside me. "Amy," he said quietly, "my family. I guess it's gone now." I shook my head. "No, our family is still here, and that's what matters most." He looked at me, his eyes full of love and gratitude. "If it weren't for you, I would have lost everything." I leaned my head on his shoulder and whispered, "No, if you hadn't dared to stand with me, I wouldn't have been able to hold on to anything." Outside, a light rain began to fall, as if washing away the turbulent months behind us. I knew the biggest storm had passed, but its aftermath would linger in everyone's hearts for a long time. And I understood that the road ahead for my family would no longer include my in-laws, but at least it would no longer include fear. After Tyler's trial, life settled down more quickly than I had expected. There were no more threatening calls, no more strangers at the gate, no more desperate texts in the middle of the night. Life for me, Henry, and Leo returned to a normal rhythm, but it was a different kind of normal, the kind known only to those who have weathered great storms. Henry became quieter, not out of sadness, but with a new gravity. Every evening, after I put Leo to sleep, he would sit on the balcony for a long time, smoking a single cigarette before putting it out, afraid the smoke would affect our son. I knew he carried a great emptiness where his old family used to be. One night, I brought him a cup of hot tea, and he asked softly, "Amy, do you think my mother will ever forgive me?" I sat down beside him, looking at the city lights below. "Honestly, I don't know. But I think time will lessen her pain. Whether she forgives or not is her choice." He nodded, silent for a long time, then said, "I'm just afraid that by the time I figured everything out, I would no longer have a mother." That sentence made my heart ache. I placed my hand on his. "You still have time. But don't let the fear of losing your mother make you lose your wife and son again." He turned to look at me, his gaze serious. "I promise, I won't lose you again." A few weeks later, Vanessa called me unexpectedly. Her voice was hoarse and tired. "Amy, I had the baby." My heart stirred. "Is the baby healthy?" "It's a girl. She's very weak. The doctors said she needs to be in an incubator for a few days." I paused, then asked, "Do you have enough for the hospital bills?" Vanessa choked up. I haven't been able to scrape enough together." I closed my eyes. I pictured Tyler in prison, Vanessa crying in front of me, My mother-in-law stooped back as she walked away. I understood their story hadn't ended with a 2.5-year sentence. "What's the hospital's address?" I asked. Vanessa was stunned. "Amy, are you saving us again?" I replied slowly. "I'm not saving Tyler. I can't turn my back on a newborn child." That afternoon, I went to the hospital. Vanessa lay in bed, gaunt and pale. Her baby girl was in an incubator, her skin pink, her breaths tiny and shallow. In that moment, my heart melted. Seeing me, Vanessa burst into tears. "Amy, I will be grateful to you for the rest of my life." I placed an envelope with the hospital fees on her table and said gently, "Vanessa, I'm helping you this time not because of our past connection, but because I'm a mother too." She nodded, crying uncontrollably. Before I left, I made it clear, from now on, I will only help you and your daughter within my means and within the law. I am not shielding anyone anymore. She nodded repeatedly. I told Henry that night. He was silent for a long time, then said, "Amy, you are too kind." I gave a sad smile. "No, I just don't want our son to grow up and ask me why his mother once saw a child in need and turned away." After the baby was born, my mother-in-law started contacting Henry again, but only to talk about her new granddaughter. She never mentioned me or asked about Leo. I could see the deep sadness in Henry's eyes after each call. One day, he told me, "Amy, my mother wants to see me alone." I nodded slightly. "You should go. I won't stop you." He came home very late that night, his eyes red. I didn't press him, just poured him a glass of water and waited. After a long while, he finally spoke. "Mom, she has aged so much. She said she hasn't been able to sleep since Tyler went to prison. She said she knows she was wrong, but she doesn't know how to begin apologizing to you." My heart stirred. "She mentioned me?" I asked softly. He nodded. "She said she owes you an apology, but she's too ashamed to face you." I was silent. A strange feeling washed over me, not joy, not anger, just the weariness of someone who had been fighting for too long. "Do you want me to see her?" he asked. I thought for a long time, then shook my head. "Not yet. When my heart is truly at peace, I will. But for now, I'm afraid that just seeing her will reopen all the old wounds." He took my hand and nodded. "I understand." Time passed faster than I realized. Leo turned 1. For his birthday, I threw a small party with just my parents and a few close friends. No in-laws, no Vanessa, no mother-in-law, but the house was filled with laughter and love. My father held Leo and smiled. "This one is destined for great things." My mother whispered to me, "Look around you, dear. You held your family together." I looked at my son, and a lump formed in my throat. It was true. After everything, what I had managed to keep wasn't money or reputation, but a peaceful home for my child. One evening, as I was putting Leo to sleep, Henry's phone rang. He answered, and his face changed. "Amy, Mom's in the hospital." My heart stopped. "What happened?" "She had a heart attack. She's in the emergency room." I stood frozen for a second. All the resentment, all the hurt, vanished like smoke. "Go to her. Now," I said. "I'll stay with Leo." He looked at me, hesitating. "You're not coming with me?" I shook my head. "Not yet. But you need to be with her. She needs you." He nodded and rushed out. I barely slept that night, not out of fear, but because something inside me was slowly, quietly changing. I was letting go. The next morning, Henry called, his voice lighter. "She's out of critical condition." I sighed in relief. "That's good." He was quiet for a moment, then said, "When she woke up, the first person she asked about was Leo." My heart trembled. She said she wants to see her grandson one last time before she dies." That sentence left me sitting in silence for a very long time. That night, I thought about the party she had skipped, her cruel words, the months she had pushed me to my breaking point. But I also thought of an old woman who had just survived a brush with death, lying alone in a hospital bed, filled with regret. Finally, I told Henry, "Tomorrow, you can take our son to see her." He was stunned. You really mean it?" I nodded, my voice slow. "I'm not doing it for her. I'm doing it for you and for our son. I don't want him to grow up hearing that his mother once kept him from his grandmother." The next day, for the first time in a very long time, I carried Leo into the hospital room where my mother-in-law lay. She was much thinner, her hair almost completely white. The moment she saw her grandson, her eyes filled with tears. My boy." I stood by silently as she took him, her hands trembling, tears falling onto his cheek. After a long moment, she looked at me, her voice weak. Amy, I'm sorry," just 2 words. But I knew how much pride she had to swallow to say them. I bowed my head, my voice quiet. "It's in the past now, Mom," she cried, weeping as if releasing a lifetime of mistakes. In that moment, my heart was no longer filled with anger, only a strange lightness. The lightness of someone who had finally decided not to carry a grudge for the rest of her life. On the way home, Henry held my hand, his own hand shaking. "Amy, thank you. If it weren't for you, I would have lost both my mother and my wife." I leaned my head on his shoulder and whispered, "A family isn't a place where there are no mistakes. It's a place where people are willing to forgive each other once the pain is great enough." But I also knew this wasn't the end. There was still Tyler in prison, Vanessa raising a child alone, and my mother-in-law carrying the weight of her regret. And most importantly, there was the future of my own little family. After everything that had happened, after that hospital visit, a sense of peace settled over me, one I hadn't felt in years. It wasn't the tense quiet of a ceasefire, but the deep calm of a sea after a hurricane. The waves had subsided, and for the first time, I could see the bottom clearly. My mother-in-law stayed in the hospital for 3 more weeks. Henry visited her every day after work. Some nights he came home exhausted, but he never complained. I understood this was his way of making up for the time he had left her alone in her own self-inflicted misery. One evening, he came home early, his voice low and trembling. "Mom wants to see you." I stood still. I knew this day would come, but my heart still tightened. What did she say? She said if she can't see you properly one more time, she won't be able to die in peace. That sentence silenced me. I thought of the empty chair at the party, the scornful looks, the bitter words. But then, the image of her in the hospital bed, her hands trembling as she held my son, rose to the surface. That night, I thought about right and wrong, love and hate, and the years I had spent steeling myself to protect my small family. I had always chosen strength, logic, and the law. But there was one choice I had never made: forgiveness. The next morning, I told Henry, "I'll go to the hospital this afternoon." He looked at me, his eyes red, and simply nodded. The hospital room was quiet. My mother-in-law was propped up on pillows, looking frail, her hair now almost entirely white. The moment I walked in, she began to cry. "Amy, you came." I stood by her bed. After a long silence, she spoke, her voice weak and broken. "I'm sorry, Amy. From the very beginning, I was wrong about everything." I bowed my head, and a tear escaped my eye. I was selfish. I was greedy. I loved my son blindly. "I hurt you, and I hurt this entire family," she sobbed. I sat down in the chair beside her bed and said softly, "Mom, it's over. I don't want to bring it up again." She shook her head, tears streaming down her face. "No, I have to say it. If I don't, I'll carry this guilt to my grave." She took my hand. It was cold and trembling. "Amy, if I hadn't skipped the party that day, if I had just shown you a little kindness, maybe none of this would have happened." Her words were a final, sharp pain in my heart. I nodded, my voice choked. "Yes, but because of it, I learned just how strong I had to be to protect my child." She cried harder. "I was wrong. I was so wrong." I looked at her, and I no longer saw the mother-in-law who had wounded me. I saw an old woman who had lost so much, left with nothing but regret and fear. I squeezed her hand, and for the first time in years, I said the word slowly, "Mom." She froze, then broke down completely, weeping as if to purge a lifetime of sorrow. In that moment, I knew the wound in my heart had finally closed. A few months later, my mother-in-law was discharged. She moved in with a cousin in the suburbs, closer to the hospital. She never interfered in our lives again. Once a week, She would ask to visit Leo. She would sit and play with him, never mentioning money, never speaking of the past. I let her come, not because I had forgotten, but because I understood that holding on to hatred wouldn't make me stronger. It would only weigh me down. A year passed quickly. Leo learned to walk, to call Dada, to wrap his arms around my neck and laugh. Every time I saw him toddling around the house, I knew every storm I had endured was worth it. My company thrived. I no longer did business with anyone from my husband's extended family, choosing my partners carefully, prioritizing security over profit. After everything, I understood that money can be remade, but peace cannot. One afternoon, I received a letter from prison. It was from Tyler. I opened it and read it slowly. Asterisk Amy, I'm not writing to ask for anything. I just want to say thank you. In here, I've realized that if you hadn't turned me in, I'd probably be dead by now, either from debt or from violence. I regret so much. Every night, I think about my daughter. I swear, the day I get out, I will start over. If you still hate me, I accept it. But please, check in on my wife and child sometimes. I am forever in your debt. Asterisk, I folded the letter, a weight lifting from my soul. Some people have to hit rock bottom to learn how to be human. I sent Vanessa a short text. Asterisk, Tyler is doing okay. Focus on raising your daughter. Asterisk, she replied instantly. Asterisk, thank you, Amy. I will never forget. Asterisk. 3 years later, on the day of Tyler's release, I didn't go. But I asked Henry to take Vanessa and their daughter to the prison gates. When he returned, he told me Tyler was thinner, quieter, his eyes completely changed. He had bowed his head and thanked Henry, saying he would never have the courage to look me in the eye again. I just nodded. For me, the past was closed. One evening, after Leo was asleep, Henry and I sat on the balcony, watching the city light up. The breeze was cool and peaceful. He suddenly asked, Amy, if you could go back, would you regret marrying me? I looked at him for a long time, then shook my head. No, if I hadn't walked that path, I wouldn't be the woman I am today, and you wouldn't be the man you are now. He smiled sadly. I owe you my life. I took his hand and shook my head gently. We don't owe each other anything. We were just lucky enough not to let go of each other during the hardest time. From inside, Leo stirred and called out softly, Mama. I stood up and went to his room. Looking at him, sleeping soundly, his face rosy, his arms wrapped around a small teddy bear, my heart filled with a profound, heavy happiness. I realized something simple. Family isn't a place where there are no mistakes. Family is a place where, after all the mistakes, people still have enough love left to come back home. Years ago, I stood alone in a ballroom, holding my son, enduring the pity of others. Tonight, I sat in my warm house, with my husband and my child, surrounded by a peace I had fought so hard to win. I wasn't richer or more powerful, but I had something many people search for their whole lives, a family that learned to cherish each other after nearly losing each other forever. Outside, the moon rose slowly, its light soft and gentle. I pulled the blanket over my son, kissed his forehead, and whispered, Honey, sometimes in life, you have to be as hard as a rock to protect what you love most. But in the end, it's best to be as soft as water, so your own heart can find peace. And I knew that the journey for me, for Henry, for our little family, would have no more great storms. There would only be ordinary days. And it is in those ordinary days that we find the greatest happiness of all.